Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Mohammed Shafiq. I'm the chair of the PCS Union National Black Members Committee. Welcome to our live closure event for Black History Month, which has been going on throughout the whole month of October. We have a really important topic, tackling the rise of the far right. We see across the country increased level of racism and xenophobia directed towards migrants, refugees, Muslims, members of the Jewish community, and other communities. And this session is going to look at really the importance of how we can organize against the rise of reform, and how we can stand stronger together in protecting both our members, but more importantly, the communities in which we live and work. We'll explore how PCS is preparing to defend rights and freedoms should reform come to power. So that it's important that preparatory work is done as a union, and already the vital work that is being done across workplaces and in communities over this past 12 months. It's really a call to action, not just for our Black members, but all of our unions to unite, to organise, and to lead a fight for equality, for justice and solidarity wherever we live and work in the United Kingdom. It is also very, very important as we celebrate to acknowledge that it's not just only about remembrance, it's also about shaping the future. And for trade unions, that means strengthening representation across our movement. Very proud we have a strong representation on the NEC, in groups and in different parts of the union. And I'm also supported in my important, vital work in the National Black Members Committee by my Vice Chair, Tracy Hilton, who's always steadfast in supporting the work that we do. And actually, it's about highlighting how do we tackle racism wherever it exists, and ensuring Black voices are heard across our movement. And particularly in today's climate, it's with the rise of the far right, it's vital that we remain organised and united. We're proud to stand up to racism, and we're proud to be led by a General Secretary who is speaking on various platforms across the country, articulating how we all feel. But the important thing is not about speeches, it's about organising and strengthening our work in our movement. As always, you are watching this on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and we're also on Twitter, now known as X as well. If you have a comment or a question or a message of solidarity, please post it in the chat function box. Our colleagues will share that messages with me and we'll announce them as we get through. We've got some really important speakers. We have Fran Heathcote, our General Secretary, speaking to us very, very shortly. We're also joined by Kim Johnson, the MP for Liverpool Riverside. We have Naila Ashraf from Stand Up to Racism in the Northwest. And we've also joined by PCS Group Vice, sorry, I'm talking about my own role there. We're joined by PCS Union Group President and NEC member Angela Grant, as well as our speaker here. And they'll speak to you about the journey that we have as a movement, because I think it's really, really important. As we see, only in the last couple of weeks, we've seen another young Asian woman being raped in a racially aggravated rape. Obviously, there's not much we can talk about that because that case is now being produced in court, and but there is a wider increase of racism. Muslim women, Jewish members, we remember quite rightly the terrorist attack at the synagogue, the arson attack in the mosque, temples, Sikh and Hindu temples are being attacked. People of colour across this country have been attacked. So it's really important that we come together and show solidarity with this campaign, but also understand we've got a heck of a ride and heck of a fight ahead of us over the next few years as we head towards that 2029 general election. Defeat is not inevitable. Reform forming the next government is not inevitable. What is inevitable is if we sit back and allow them to, one, to claim the narrative, two, to claim the microphone, and three, to peddle their fake news and their hatred, then they'll win. But if we're able to counter, as we saw in Caerphilly, through various partners coming together, and as we see outside asylum hotels where people are coming together in huge numbers, then I believe we can not only stop reform forming the next government, but we can create the country that we want. And just look at what happened in Holland yesterday, where progressive forces have defeated the far right who were attempting to go into government. So without further ado, I'm proud to introduce our General Secretary, She's done an extraordinary first year as our General Secretary, always been an active supporter of our work in terms of the National Black Members Committee. She's a great ally, she's a great leader, and she's a great friend. Fran, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks so much for having me along, and sorry I can't stay for the whole thing, but I want to start, if it's okay, by telling you a little story, and it's a true story about unity and what we can achieve when we manage to unite people, because just a few months ago in PCS we did just that. After a year of strike action by some of our lowest paid members working as caterers, cleaners and security guards, we won a massive victory against 3 outsourcing companies, getting them better pay, better annual leave, company sick pay for the first time for many of them, contractual sick pay, special disability leave and parental leave. And that victory took real courage, and it took confidence building, and it took unity, because it included workers of every colour from nations across the world and those born in Britain, and they trusted each other and they worked together, and together they forced the government and some of those biggest outsourcing companies going to come to the table and to meet our demands. And what that shows is that when trade unions are united and when they can unite their members, we win for people. The ruling class, the billionaires, the corporations, the landlords, the media barons, they want us all to be divided, squabbling amongst ourselves, distracted from the reality that they're underpaying us and overcharging us on our bills, on our rents, on our mortgages. And the far right sow division all the time that weakens working class people. It is anti-union and against everything we stand for. And that is why Elon Musk was happy to endorse Tommy Robinson. Musk is a union-busting employer himself. He spent millions of dollars to stop workers organising a union at his own Tesla car plants. Taking on the far right is all about tackling racism, but it's also about removing a barrier to winning for working class people, and that barrier is division. The banners and the slogans of our movement aren't just rhetoric, they're hard-earned, learned truths that are as true today as they ever were, such as unity is strength, united we stand, divided we fall, and an injury to one is an injury to all. Scapegoating migrants won't get you better pay, it doesn't bring down National Health Service waiting lists, and it won't reduce your rent or get you a decent home, but what it will do is give you somebody else to blame. And when people feel helpless, when they feel that politicians aren't delivering for them, then for some people that is enough to turn to an alternative that reform is currently presenting. So the rise of the far right is a sign of political failure as well. And that is the message that we need to make clear. We know what's happened in recent years. We know that wages have been driven down. NHS waiting lists have risen to record levels. Record numbers of children growing up in poverty. Record numbers of families are homeless, living in temporary accommodation. Energy bills, water bills, rent going up and up and up, above inflation all the time. And we all know that Nigel Farage has no answers to any of those problems, but he will give you somebody to blame. Why solve Britain's complex problems when you can simply point the finger at somebody else? And we have to be honest, and we have to recognise that Labour has been in power for over a year now, and most people don't feel currently that things have got better. And for many people, they haven't. And too often, rather than counter reform's narrative, our government has reinforced it. So our union, PCS, has a really proud history of standing up to xenophobia and racism that does nothing for working class people in Britain. When the Tories tried to introduce the Rwanda scheme, we took them to court, we won, and we blocked that policy. And when Keir Starmer made a speech calling us an island of strangers, we condemned him as well. When the Tories said stop the boats, or Labour say smash the gangs, we say open, safe and secure routes. But we don't just say it. We work with our members, working in the Home Office, at the borders, to develop our policies, publish them and educate our members about them. There is no need for a single refugee to be forced across the channel on a small boat. About 80 people died last year, including over a dozen children making that perilous journey. And why was that? It was because the government refused to open safe routes for people that were fleeing war and persecution, like we rightly opened safe routes for those fleeing Ukraine after the Russian invasion. Not a single Ukrainian had to cross the channel by a small boat, and we could do that for all asylum seekers. seekers. We're really proud in PCS to mobilise against the far right on the streets, in the workplace, to take governments enacting far right policies to court, and to campaign for fair and equitable asylum policies like Safe Routes. Our job as a union is always to unite people and to win for members, and that means standing up to racism, because racism isn't just an attack on migrants or on Black people. Is an attack on the whole working class, and it diminishes it all, and we are all better than that. So I want to talk a bit more practically about what we can do. And I was on a speaker on the 13th of September in London, where frankly we were outnumbered by the far right, and it was not a very nice place to be. But I was also, a week later, there was a massive rally in Glasgow where we outnumbered the far right, and there was an incredible show of strength and solidarity. And I was proud to be a speaker at the Newcastle rally a week later, where again we massively outnumbered the far right, and we prevented them from getting to the Asylum Hotel where they had planned their protest. And that was again a real show of strength of people to come in together. And I don't believe that lots of our members are naturally racist, but those demonstrations are certainly organised by racists. And if they go, the whole point of getting people along to them is to try and convince people, to sort of mobilise people into action. So we know that the rise of the far right is gaining ground, if you like, by exploiting people's fear and frustration. Their ideas are creeping into mainstream politics and media, and they are normalising hate and misinformation. And if you listen to some of the rhetoric from Keir Starmer and others, they need to not try and reform, but actually we need to put pressure on them to recognise that they need to be better and things need to be different. We need a wider shift in tone and attitude, because it's that tone and attitude that threatens our democracy in our workplaces and could lead to attacks if we allow them to gain traction to members' rights, working rights, trade union rights, equality laws and civil service independence. So we're currently seeing the Employment Rights Bill going through the Parliament. If implemented in full, it will be transformational for workers everywhere. But of course, if reform gain power and are successful, all of those trade union rights will be under attack. So this isn't just an issue for a small minority, it is an issue for every single one of us, and it's an issue for the working class. And we need to see the biggest, show of unity, of solidarity, of strength, of people coming together that we can muster. And we do that by all working together, by all engaging together, whether it's at events like this or whether it's at the education courses that we will be putting on. We need to make sure that we get these discussions normalized, and we get them into the workplaces, and we get people talking to each other about what all of this is really about. So PCS is preparing to defend our members' rights and freedoms if reform or similar parties come to power. And of course, the next general election in 2029 can come around all too quickly. So what we mean is that we need to stand firm on equality and fairness, not bow to the rhetoric that is currently doing the rounds, build strong workplace networks ready to respond to everything that's happening, and make sure that our members are informed, they're active, and they're confident to challenge hatred. So in PCS, we've got members running anti-racist campaigns, building inclusive spaces, supporting each other, and that's we've started to discuss not just organising in our own backyard, in our workplaces, in the places where we have members, but how we grow that message in communities, how we ensure that people are all standing together and working together, sharing examples of where branches are doing good work, and encouraging every union branch to play its part in what we're doing. And Black members have always been at the forefront of our fight for equality, and that leadership and the visibility that the Black Members Committee provides is absolutely vital to everything that we're doing. So when we talk about our Arab strategy, our anti-racist, anti-fascist strategy, that serves as a cornerstone of our commitment to equality and justice, but it needs to be continually updated because it was first developed in 2014. And of course, a lot has happened since then, hasn't it? It was developed in response to the rise of far-right ideologies at the time, especially following austerity measures that had created that fertile ground for division. We updated it in 2019, and we updated it again in 2022 to reflect the changing nature of racism and fascism that we were chasing, and to make sure we strengthened our union's tools to resist all of that. But it's the key component of all of it is education. It's about people are informed about what's going on, about, you know, how it doesn't help to just turn on each other. And we do promote constantly initiatives like Wear Red to Work Day and PCS Sticker Day to try and build solidarity. We urge our reps to raise racist and fascist incidents management under workplace equality policies. We operate a 24-hour racial incidents helpline to report any workplace racism confidentially, and we encourage all of our activists to challenge far-right groups within their communities and to work with us to spread the message, really. So we support the counter demonstrations that are taking place with Stand Up to Racism, when we work with Care for Calais and other groups, and we try to ensure that everybody stays informed, everybody gets involved, and everybody supports our anti-racist campaigns. There's a lot of work going on at the moment, and we really encourage everybody to be a part of that. You know, it's your union. We want you to own the union, to own the message and the narrative. And the way we'll bring that about is by having these conversations, but also by making sure that we all work together and that we don't allow Reform or others to sow division. So you're going to hear from some excellent speakers tonight. I'm really sorry I can't stay. And I really hope that what comes out of tonight is a renewed, you know, determination between all of us about how we work together, how we stick together, and how we push back some of the messages and the toxic hatred that we're hearing at the moment, and make sure that we all work together for a better and fairer society. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoy tonight's event. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you so much, Fran. Thank you. I know it's been a busy few days for you, so we are very, very grateful that you've taken the time to join us as well. Fran Heathcote there, our General Secretary, who's been very, very strong on this issue as we're addressing. Right, we're going to head up to our next speaker. Really proud to have her as one of our guest speakers. A real honour. She's not just talks a good talk, but she really campaigns on PCS issues in the House of Commons by asking parliamentary questions. She's a member of our parliamentary group, and she's a staunch supporter of our union. Kim Johnson is the MP for Liverpool Riverside. She was born and raised in the constituency. She was elected as the city's first black MP in 2019. For those who don't know, Liverpool has the oldest black community in Europe, and Kim's election marked an historic milestone for black communities. She's a proud Scouser and a lifelong justice campaigner. She's dedicated her career to tackling inequality and amplifying the voices of the marginalized communities. She's got a background in trade union activism. She served as a shop steward, and she's been vice chair of Unison's National and Regional Black Members Committee. And in Westminster, she continues to champion social justice, protect public services, and build a fairer future for Liverpool. She's a huge advocate for Palestine and trade union rights. I'm really honoured to have you, Kim. Thank you for being such a great friend of PCS. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, and what a wonderful introduction that was. And what you didn't mention, though, was that I started as a civil servant when I was 18 years old, working in the tax office in Liverpool. So the precursor of PCS was my first union. But I'm really pleased to be here today, the fifth and final session of Black History Month, you know, tackling the threat of the far right. And I just want to say thanks to Fran for opening up and placing on record all of the great work that PCS has been doing. I have been a strong supporter of PCS both locally and nationally, and will continue to do so. But in answering, you know, is the far right a threat? I would have to say it's a massive existential threat to all of us. You know, and we've seen the growth of the far right over the last couple of years. I used to say that I'm used to challenging and fighting the fascists on the street, but now, you know, I have to deal with them in the chamber, which is something I never, ever expected to happen. You know, the rhetoric and the narrative that we hear day in, day out, coming from the politicians from the Tories, from Reform, and I have to say, sadly, comrades, from some of the people on our own benches. And the current Minister for Immigration is a guy called Mike Tapp, who used to be employed with the NCA. And I don't know whether you've seen any of his videos that he records from the beaches of Dover. He could well be a Reform MP. So the far right, I believe, are being emboldened by what they hear and what they see played out in Westminster. And for me, as a Labour MP, that is a challenge nearly every single day. But I know that as comrades, as unions, unity and solidarity, we can play a great role in terms of forcing these worms back into the holes in which they came. So recently in Liverpool, the UKIP organised a massive demo, busing, hardcore far-right members into our region. But as per usual, in terms of Liverpool, we came out in force and we stopped them from travelling around the city, from travelling around the city centre. They were kettled around St George's Hall, because what our city does and does very well is mobilise to say, not in our name. But what I will say to you, comrades, as union members, is that it's becoming very, very scary. I've spoken to a number of trade unions over the last couple of months at their conferences. And what I say is that you will have members and colleagues sitting next to you that support Reform and the far right. They believe the rhetoric and the narrative that they're hearing on the TV, on social media. And we have a massive duty in terms of challenging that whenever and wherever we see it. But I know that is not an easy task for lots of people, challenging people with these views, with these opinions that, are racist, not just for Black members, but for all our allies that are opposed to racism and the far right. And I think some of the work that PCS is doing in terms of the training is great, but I think in terms of having the confidence to be able to challenge this deeply inherent view that is getting deeper by the day has to be something that is a priority for PCS union and but for all of the other unions as well. Because if we don't cut through in terms of the myths and the misinformation that is peddled, then the threat of Reform gaining more council seats and, God forbid, gaining power at the next general election is very, very scary. But I would have to say, I understand why people feel disaffected, why people point fingers and blame refugees and asylum seekers for the failures. Sorry, I understand why people are disaffected, but what they want to do is blame somebody. And so they're told to blame refugees and asylum seekers. And we all know it's not refugees or asylum seekers that brought our public services to its knees. The people that broke our services didn't arrive in this country on boats. It is those people that travel around on private jets that brought our country to its knees in terms of the economic crisis that we're seeing. And so we have to reiterate the things that Franna said. Reform do not support workers. They voted against all elements of the Employment Rights Bill. They don't give a damn about workers' rights. They don't give a damn about the working class. They don't give a damn about supporting and developing the NHS. All they're concerned about is to support the people that put money in their pockets. And so we have to be on it to make sure that the lies and the misinformation that is perpetrated by Reform has to be challenged. And last week, the member for Runcorn and Helsby came to have a reform meeting in my constituency with reform members from across the region. And so one day in Parliament, I raised a point of order because as a member of Parliament, you have to inform the MP of the area which you're going into, that you're travelling into my constituency to hold a meeting. Well, she didn't do that. And so I raised a point of order in the chamber one day this week and called her out for the racist that she is. And some of you might have seen posts about Dawn Butler on the same day, calling her out as a racist. She was challenged by the Deputy Speaker of the House because we can't call people racist, but she is a racist. So both Dawn and I have written to the Commission of Standards to have this member investigated for the lies and the racial hatred that she's trying to stir up in my constituency, but also in the constituency where she is currently an MP, and that has to stop. I think, Hamid just mentioned that I am the first Black MP for the city, which, while a very proud moment for me, is also concerning in that we do have the oldest established Black community, but it took so long for us to elect a Black MP. And last week, in one of the northern wards in my constituency, the flags went up and my picture went up, calling for me to be kicked out and for people to challenge me. Nobody else in the party. I am one of 5 MPs in the city, yet the far right, are emboldened to be able to undertake these egregious acts in my constituency. And lucky for me, people called her out, not only from the Labour Party, but like independent. And I think that's what we need to do constantly, is call it out. And you'll know that the Prime Minister talks about the flags are patriotic. We need to take back the flags. However, for communities like mine and other very diverse communities up and down the country, these flags are used to intimidate and to threaten people. And we know that people have been attacked. We know that a couple of women have been raped by what were described as far-right people recently, and sadly for our communities, those people who are attacked, who do experience race hatred crimes, often don't report that to the police. And so, the level of racism and Islamophobia is not recorded accurately by the police. And I think, we need to do more about that. And today I received a letter from the Home Office saying that they are setting up a British Muslim network hotline so that anybody who experiences can contact this hotline and report crimes. And if Reps and Fran hasn't received that information, I'll forward that on later after this meetings. But I would say that what we need going forward in terms of tackling the rise of the right is unity and solidarity. All unions coming together and taking on the opportunity to challenge the far right. And it's not just Black members. We need allies right across the trade union movement. Because as Fran mentioned earlier, an injury to one is an injury to all, and we have to, by whatever means necessary, to challenge it and continue challenging it. So training is great, but we need the right type of training to give people the confidence to do that. And I would say to members on this call today, think about joining your local Stand Up to Racism group. I have just become the honorary chair of the Merseyside and Cheshire group. I've been asked to sit on the national exec. So doing things like that locally is something that we could all do. But unity and solidarity has to be something that we have to consider going forward. And I think, the union that I was a rep for, Unison, has done, some great work as well in terms of challenging it. But sadly, comrades, we are in an existential threat. And I think things are very different from what they were, say, 10 years ago, because we've got the likes of Musk bankrolling groups. We've got the use of social media and people going down rabbit holes and believing every single thing that they read and see on social media. But my party needs to do something, I have to say. I am very disappointed in terms of the language used by Shabana as our new Secretary of State for Home Affairs. I know that the PCS and the DWP are experiencing the impacts, changes to the skilled worker visa scheme, people losing their jobs across the public sector in prisons, in the DWP, in health and social care, changing the indefinite right to remain from 10 years to 5 years. This is all going to have a massive impact in our public services, and is very very reminiscent of what happened in terms of Windrush. Our Black and African Caribbean people, comrades, were asked to come and support this country after the war, to rebuild this country after the war. And we know how they were treated in terms of the hostile environment. The same is happening in terms of Black people now coming to plug gaps in our workforce because local people don't want to do the jobs in the prisons, in health and social care, because they're not paid very well and the terms and conditions are awful. The outsourced workers within the civil service are treated abominably, and yet we've got a Labour Party that are going much further and faster than I ever imagined that they would do. In 2024, when we won the general election, I expected us to start looking at positive ways to improve the immigration system by providing more humane routes for people, safe routes, and not treating them in this way. So as a Labour MP, I have challenged the government on some of these issues and will continue to challenge the government, but we need more MPs to do that. So, and again, I would urge members on this call to contact their MPs and ask them to contact the Home Secretary to challenge the skilled worker visa scheme, to think about safe and humane routes for people who want to come here to flee war and persecution. As Fran said, this government, previous government, opened up the door for 200,000 Ukrainians. They didn't have to cross the channel. They didn't have to put theirs and their children's lives at risk. And yet here we are at the moment in this position where people are fleeing wars and persecution and being dealt with in this way. It is inhumane, and our party has to think about doing something about making that better. But comrades, I'll finish by saying we are at a very dangerous turning point, and we must continue to organise from the streets and to Parliament, and push the tidal wave of hate and fight the government to deliver our communities a better hope for the future. And we can only do that when we are united and when we work in solidarity, comrades. So thank you for joining this call. Carry on the good work, and let's do everything that we can to stop the rise of the far right in this country and protect workers' rights and protect our communities. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Kim, for your support and solidarity, and we wish you well. And the reason they're targeting you and not some of the other MPs is because you're a really strong, vocal and honest voice. So solidarity from everybody here at PCS. Thank you so much, Kim Johnson, the MP for Liverpool Riverside. So one of the most important activities that PCS is involved in is supporting Stand Up to Racism and Unite Against Fascism. Community organisations coming together, trade unions and an umbrella organisation, and organising against the far right, which includes now, sadly, having to organise once again against reform, and the likes of Tommy Robinson and others who've been defeated before. But as Kim said, this is going to be the battle of our very existence, because not only are we having to fight those battles externally within communities, in our politics, in Westminster, in homes around the communities, but actually we're having to deal with that even within our trade union movement. We're seeing an ever increasing number of members who are voting for reform, and that's why it's so important that as we tackle the far right in our communities and in our workplaces, that we don't forget the battle within our movement as well. It's a long history, to remember from where Black communities came here in the 50s and 60s after the Second World War ended to rebuild this country, and it suffered massive racism and have contributed to the rebuilding of this country. So we pay tribute to them as this is our final Black History Month event. So one of those organizations that we're very proud to be affiliated to, PCS, is a key partner, supporter of Stand Up to Racism. And one of the most, I think, strongest women I know is Naila Ashraf, who's always on the front line fighting against the far right, and is never intimidated by anybody, a fascist, a racist, or a xenophobe. And I'm hoping that she can hear me. But while she's not here, but they do some really important work. And in recent times, when we saw the far right riots earlier on this year, they were also something. Sorry, this year and last year, they were something which Naila and her team were working flat out. Naila, thank you so much for stepping in, and really honoured to have you here.
Mohammed, thank you, and thank you to PCS and inviting me to this very important meeting. And thank you also for that lovely introduction. It's worth saying, yes, I may be on the front of those demonstrations, but there's always a few hundred people behind me, and really that's where our strength comes from, is the solidarity from the rest of the movement. And who would have thought, after what we saw last summer and the fact that we pushed the fascists off the streets when it came to those riots outside hotels. And it's worth saying, when we talk about riots that took place last summer, those weren't riots. If you're trying to burn down a hotel housing refugees, that's not a riot, that's a pogrom. And I think it's really important that we call it out for what it was. But we came out in our hundreds and our thousands, and we pushed them off our streets. But we've seen over the last few months that they have come back out and they are demonstrating outside hotels up and down the country. And I think it's absolutely shocking that that is happening. But we need to question why that is happening. I mean, I would say it's unacceptable when people, whether it's politicians or whether it's the mainstream press, say something along the lines of, well, these people have legitimate concerns. Let's start by saying you can have legitimate concerns about the question of homelessness, about the concerns around the welfare state. That doesn't justify demonstrating outside a hotel, housing the most vulnerable within our communities, because the people in those hotels are part of our community, and to target those people is racist. It's as simple as that. A lot of these hotels, they would have had people staying there that you wouldn't have known who they were, but it didn't result in demonstrations taking place outside. And a lot of times these people demonstrating outside the hotels will talk about the fact that we're doing this because we're standing up for women. We're concerned about women and children. Well, let's be quite clear. The people that demonstrated outside the hotels last year and were arrested, 40%, or actually over 40% of those people had a criminal record, many of which to do with domestic violence and other forms of violence. So I'm not taking any lessons from these people that are demonstrating this year, supposedly under the pretext of defending women. There are no protectors of women. And in fact, if anything, if you see the counter demonstrations, many of those demonstrations are being led by women, whether it's white or black women. They're at the forefront of those demonstrations. They recognize that actually the refugees in those hotels are no enemy to us or to our safety. We know that as women, we are more likely to be attacked by someone who we already know within our direct family, or our, rather than somebody who's come over on a small boat. And I do want to say this, they go on about we're concerned about illegal immigrants. Well, these people are not illegal. Once you come to Britain and you start seeking asylum, you're no longer illegal. You're in the system, your application is being processed. So it's unacceptable that they go on about illegal immigrants. These people are not illegal. And if you want to stop boats, if you want to stop people coming over in boats, the best way to do that is create safe passage, as we did when it came to the Ukrainian refugees. And I do want to say this, when the Ukrainian refugees came over, we opened our arms to them, we opened our homes to them, we opened our communities to those refugees. We have, British people don't have a problem with refugees. It's the real problem is a narrative coming from the media and from the political class who try to tell us that actually these refugees are a problem, that they're to blame. And with that narrative, it's not a surprise that we're seeing the confidence around the far right taking to our streets week in, week out, because that's what's happening. They're outside these hotels week in, week out, trying to, push the politics of fear and division within our communities. And I'm really proud to say that at Stand Up to Racism, we have come out and we have organised and we've pushed back time and time again. But we also need to do more. We need to recognise that the threat of the far right has never been greater. I mean, I'm from the Northwest. I've been involved in campaigns in the past when Nick Griffin got elected as an MEP. And I'm proud to say, actually, that entire time that he was a member of the European Parliament representing the Northwest, he was never able to do a single public meeting or event within Manchester, because every time he came out, we stopped him. Every time he tried to step foot into this city, we pushed him back and said, actually, you're not welcome. I was also involved in the campaign across the Northwest, and Tommy Robinson thought he was going to stand as a member of the European Parliament. And again, along with all the trade union support we had across the Northwest, we were able to mobilise and push him back into the gutter where he belongs. But he's back out on the streets again. And we've just seen the biggest, a demonstration that he called resulted in the biggest mobilisation of the far right in the streets of London in the history of this country. And that is something that we have to take very seriously. And I would say, the reason things look different this time round, even compared to last summer, is because we've seen, the Reform UK party, obviously Farage having the platform that they have got. We also see a year into Labour government where the truth is that many people don't feel that things are changing for the better. They, a lot of them have lost hope, and therefore, it's an attraction. The idea of something different, Reform UK, is something different. Especially when you've got the likes of social media and Musk and all the funding that went into that demonstration supporting Tommy Robinson. They've got a real platform. But I think it's really important to say, even with the support that the far right have, with the richest man in the world, Musk, defending and supporting Tommy Robinson, even with that, we are still the majority. And I think it's really important for us to always remember that. We are the majority, but I think it's really important that we no longer are the quiet majority. We need to come together, we need to organise, we need to mobilise, because actually the threat is real. I think what we did in Wales is fantastic. We pushed back Reform UK. In Altrincham, we did the same. I think in both of these areas where they have stood and they assume they're going to win, when we have come together, when we have organised, when we stood and said, you're not welcome here, we have succeeded in pushing them back. And we can do that. Farage is very confident right now. He likes to tell us he could be potentially the next leader of this country. Well, that could happen, but only if we sit back and let it happen. Because we have agency in this. As workers, as trade union activists, we can change the narrative. We can organise and be stronger, and we can push them back. So a couple of things I want to say. If as trade union activists, you're not already connected up with your local Stand Up to Racism group, please get in touch and work together with the local groups. We need as many trade union activists involved in the local Stand Up to Racism groups, because we are a national organisation, and I think we've really done some amazing stuff, particularly over the last couple of years. But the threat has never been more serious, and therefore we need a much bigger and much rooted anti-racist movement to push them back. We can no longer be complacent. So my one call is to get in contact with your local Stand Up to Racism group. We also have a national conference on the 8th of November. It's not this weekend, the week after. Please, if you are a part of a trade union branch and you're affiliated to Stand Up to Racism, or actually even if you're not affiliated and you're going through the process of getting affiliation, please sign up to that conference, because we want to bring as many people together to organise, to learn from each other, and then take it back into our local areas, because it is about what we do locally. It's important that we're a national organisation. It's important that we have the national events, but also we have international contacts as well. But actually, the strength of every national organisation comes down to what we are doing locally, and it's that organisation locally that means that we're rooted and we're able to respond to any form of racism, whether it's the attacks at the mosques, the other places of worship, whether it's a synagogue or a Sikh temple, whether it's attacks on the streets against Muslim women like myself. We need to get organised. We need to say, actually, you're not welcome here. Every time the far right march, we need to make sure that we outnumber them. That's really important. And we can do that by being connected up. I do want to say this. The far right, especially those that are campaigning outside the hotels, would say they're doing it in the name of defending women. Well, there is now an organisation called Women Against the Far Right. If you've not heard of them, look them up, get connected up, because that is an organisation, part of Stand Up to Racism, a group that is saying, actually, as women, we are going to own our own narrative, and we are not going to allow the far right to speak on our behalf. So it's a really important initiative that I want as many people as possible to get involved in. So yeah, get onto the website, find your local Women Against the Far Right group, get organised, get involved, and let's build a mass movement. I do want to just touch on this idea of the flags as well. I think it's disgraceful that we're not seeing more politicians standing up against them. When Starmer talks about reclaiming the flag and patriotism, we know as Black people, everywhere those flags have appeared, that is not about patriotism. This is not about waving a flag at a sports event. This is about marking your territory and intimidating Black people. This is what this is about. It's not about showing pride. It's about showing aggression. And I think it's absolutely disgraceful that more politicians aren't speaking up against the flags, because we know as Black people what those flags represent. And it's not about welcoming people. It's not about unity and celebrating our diversity. In fact, it's everything against what I've just talked about. So, the threat is real. The far right are growing. Farage and his mates think they are on a high, but we can stop them. They might have the money, but we are still the majority. And when we organise, we do better. Now, I've had there's some question around what can unions do. Well, firstly, I want to say PCS and all the other trade unions that we work with, they are the backbone of the anti-racist movement. It's where working class people are the most organised, and we need to remember that. And we know, I've had some trade union activists say to me, but we can't talk about reform because some of our members may have voted for reform. That's true, we know that, but it doesn't mean we can't win them to our politics. And one way of doing that is, making sure that your union branch has passed a motion to support Stand Up to Racism and call out Reform UK for the racists that they are. And as part of raising those motions and about those discussions is about having the arguments with your colleagues and your comrades in the workplace about, who Reform are, and really smashing those myths, because we know that if Reform UK do continue to win more elections, it isn't just an attack on Black people, it's an attack on the working class as a whole. Reform UK, and Farage is no friend of working class people. He has a politics of hate and division and fear. He wants to celebrate the kind of politics that Trump is pushing in America, and we know where that can lead to. And we can never allow the politics of Reform UK to become normalised in British society. And I want to say very quickly, because I think I am running out of time, we have a proud history in Britain of fighting the far right and beating them. We look very different from the rest of Europe. Now, some people would like to say that's because of, British values, or somehow because we drink tea and play cricket. Let me say quite clearly here, it is about British values, but it's not the British values that the Tory party or the Labour Party or other politicians talk about. It's British values based on working class solidarity and unity, and calling out the fascists wherever they come out on our streets. So we need to continue to do that, but we can only do that with mass numbers, and we need to be rooted in our local communities. We need to be standing in solidarity with whoever is under attack, whether it's based on your faith or your sexuality. We know that it's not just an attack on Black people. The growth of the far right is an attack on working class communities, on what they call the woke culture, and we need to stop them and make sure that we build a society that is safe, for everyone, whoever you are, and we build that based on solidarity and unity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Naila. Apologies, I'm having connection issues on my laptop, so I've joined Angela in her room. But thank you so much, Naila. I don't know if you're going to stay for the question and answers, but if there are things we can feed back, we're, as we said, a really important ally for Stand Up to Racism. And as I said, thank you so much for joining us. Our final speaker, then we'll open it up to question and answers, is Angela Grant. She is the group president of PCS, the first Black president PCS has. Another important representation is so important in our movement. She's a vital ally and an inspiration to me and so many of the Black workers in our union and beyond. But she's also a member of our National Executive Committee. So I'm just going to flick this camera, so I hope this works. And then Angela's going to address us, and then we'll take some questions. Angela Grant.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Okay, I'll come back through if you need this camera. So sorry about that, everybody, but we are having some connection issues in the office, so it was easier for Mohammed to come in and speak to, just to do the introductions on here. So yeah, so I'm Angela Grant. I am the group president for the Department for Work and Pensions. I am a lay representative. So whereas we've heard from MPs, we've heard from Fran, General Secretary, heard from Naila that is speaking on behalf of Stand Up to Racism, I am here as a lay representative, which means that I work on the shop floor. I'm a civil servant. So I am out there, you know, in the offices, still working with our members, constantly working with our members. And Kim said something that is really stark, but very true, that we are hearing some of this rhetoric, this far right and racist and fascist rhetoric from our members on the shop floor, on the floor plate. And it's not just in PCS, it's not just in our civil service departments, but it is right out there across the public sector and the private sector. And the word emboldened, I don't know how many times I've heard that word, but it just describes where we are, doesn't it? Because whereas before, people used to say to me, oh, people aren't racist anymore. It's not like that anymore. And myself being, I am a child of immigration. You know, my granddad came from Barbados, and I do identify as a Black member because I am a Black woman. Although I appear, you know, and people say, oh, you're white passing. And I'm like, don't ever say that. I would be, because passing is a verb, and I do not try to pass for white. I totally, you know, own my identity and who I am. But looking as I do, I hear it. And people are emboldened, and they will speak in front of me. So I hear it more than our Black workers will hear it, more than our African and Asian, you know, and our Caribbean workers will hear it. Because they feel that they can speak in front of me until I say to them, you talked about my people, talk about my family. And they go, oh, and they realise, but it's out there. It's always been there. It was just a little bit more underground for a few years, maybe for 10, 15 years. But what we found was, and you know, this hasn't only just happened. We saw Theresa May, do you remember when the Tories first came in? And she was talking about shopping an immigrant. Do you remember with the go home vans, telling them to go home? Well, where that started, we are now seeing that with banners on our street, go home. So this has happened since we saw the Tories come in 20, you know, the coalition in 2010, and it's moved on through those years. And we're now seeing it while we have a Labour government in power, Labour government that have the ability to make change. And, you know, I listened to Kim, and Kim is a fantastic MP, fantastic ally. And there are others, you know, we have a PCS parliamentary group, and we have some fantastic anti-racist, anti-fascist MPs that work alongside our trade unions. But what we are seeing in the House of Commons is racist rhetoric. And I have watched the video, you know, Dawn Butler calling out racism and being told that she cannot call out racism in the Houses of Parliament. We have the Deputy Speaker of the House saying, well, you're not allowed to say that. What does that say to members of the public, that we cannot call out racism? We will call out racism. We will not be silenced. We will shout it out where we see it happens, and we will fill every single space with our anti-racism, our anti-xenophobia, our anti-Islamophobia, you know, and anti-fascism. We have to do that. So we've heard a lot of what I would have covered. The politics of it, disaffected people, where we see, the decline in society, where shops are closing, how there aren't enough houses. We've got people living on the streets, and what an absolute disgrace it is in the year 2025 that people are living on the streets. But that is not because of a lack of money, and it's not because governments are giving money to immigrants, people that are coming in on boats. That's not what creates homelessness. What creates homelessness is a government that does not manage the public purse properly. It does not look after communities. It does not put money in people's pockets. It does not lower, tax for those that are struggling to live, and increase tax for the richest in the country. What it does, it says that there isn't any money there. We can't do this. We can't, we have to close the doors and not allow people into the country because we can't afford to look after them. And it creates a rhetoric. The government creates the rhetoric, and the Labour Party can change that. And we have to make them change it, because we are the electorate, and it is us that should be working with our MPs in every single constituency and pressing for better from our elected MPs. So we're seeing the far right, aren't we? We see them preying on the vulnerable. We see them talk about, they're trying to protect women and children. Let's just look at that. We're here to protect women and children, and you've got women that are standing with them, and what an absolute disgrace that women are saying they're protecting women and children. And when you talk to them about the attacks on women by the far right, when you talk to them about the 41% of people that were arrested in Southport after those young children were murdered, and people rioted on the streets, not giving any kind of respect to those families of those children that had just been murdered. They were on the street creating a riot, wanting to burn the mosques, pull the mosques apart. Where was the respect in that? But we found then afterwards that 41% of those men that had been arrested, we found 41% of them had been charged with domestic abuse. So looking after women, but they've been charged with spousal abuse. So abuse to their partners, who they're supposed to love, abuse to their partners. And that domestic abuse against women also affects children, because children are in the household where that domestic abuse is happening. So how are these people looking after women and children? They're not, are they? And that is why, as Nyla has said, Women Against Fascism, that movement, we have to grow that movement, because women, we have to stand and say, you do not speak for us. I do not want any fascist speaking for me, telling people that they are protecting me, because they're not. What they are doing is creating further issues across our society. They are promoting reform, and if reform come to government, they will not look after women. We've seen what Donald Trump is doing across the pond, and what is happening there will be replicated here. There will be no protections for women. There will be no protections for workers. We will not have an NHS. We will have, the right to choose, the right to choose what happens with your own body taken away from us. That is what a reform government would give to us. And we have to make sure that our communities, and certainly women in our communities, understand that, because we cannot have men that are abusing women speaking on our behalf. I just want to, I'm not sure how many of you will have heard of the theory of folk devils and moral panic. It's a theory where, there will be a creation of people as devils, and they did it with the mods and the rockers, back in the 60s. And there will always be a community that is scapegoated for all of the ills of society. At this moment in time, the scapegoats are those that are coming in on small boats. And as I think it was Kim that said, it's people that are on yachts and big, planes that are causing our issues. It's not people that are struggling to cross the water at risk of death, a pain of death, jumping into a dinghy. They're not the people that are causing our issues, but they have become the folk devil, and it's their turn to be scapegoated now. And because we have seen racism that has been so buried underground for a period of time, where we see the those that are feeling it really more able now to have the conversation and say, well, it is actually that black person over there. My neighbour's black, you know, and you know what they've got in their house? They've got a gorgeous garden and I haven't got a gorgeous garden. And we see this playing communities off against each other, playing neighbour off against neighbour. And the folk devil and moral panic is so clear, as clear today as it was when the books were written about it in the 60s. And it's that same kind of coming after our class, because this is a class battle. It is. We are in a class fight. There is a them and us, but it's not black and white people. It is the rich. It is the super rich, and it is the middle classes, because the middle classes are no longer rich. The middle classes are the working class, along with those in the lower classes. And we talk about subcultures and gangs and gang warfare. We look at our kids, and what hope do they have? What hope is government giving them? And that is why all of this rhetoric is being allowed to fester. And while we are in our workplaces, I think it was Nala that said it. While we are in our workplaces, while we are organising as trade unionists, we have the keys of change in our hands. We can build change because we organise the working class. So it is for us in our unions to make sure that we are having those conversations all the time, that we are putting those training packages in place, that we are teaching and educating about what racism and fascism actually is, because it becomes, sometimes if it's overused, it becomes a strap line. Oh, that person's a racist. What do you actually mean by that? What actually sits underneath that? And so in PCS, we have created our anti-racist and anti-fascist strategy. Now, the strategy has been out for a number of years now. I think it probably was about 2019 when it first came about. And it's a work in progress, and we build on it all the time. So if members have not already looked at our anti-racist, anti-fascist strategy, please have a look at it. I don't know if we can get a link to it on the screen. But within it talks about some of the training that we do, that training packages that PCS can run. One of them is racism and intolerance, changing attitudes in the workplace. And what that helps with is having those difficult conversations. How do you, certainly if you're a white person, how do you talk about racism? Because if you haven't had that lived experience, how can you feel that that you can do that argument justice? Get on one of the training courses, go along and listen. Let's start doing a little bit of role play, having that conversation between ourselves, and how would you answer that? Because it's only by us building from the grassroots and speaking to those members that don't quite understand what racism is that we can affect that change. But we can affect that change. We cannot sit and go, do you know what? It's all done. Reform are going to end up getting in, They can't. We have 4 years to build in our political spaces to ensure that we have a government come the next election. Well, before then, because we need change now. But certainly, should there be a snap election, should we get to 4 years on, we have to make sure that as soon as possible we are turning the rhetoric. And Fran said, PCS are right at the forefront. If there's an anti-fascist march, no matter where it is, PCS will be there. I was on the same demo as Kim was on when UKIP came to our streets, and they tried to get themselves off St George's Plateau just by Lime Street Station, and they did not get off that plateau. They went around in circles, I don't know how many times. But I'll tell you what was really noticeable on that day, the police were trying to help them march. And we have got to start working with right across our public services. We have got to speak to every single public service, but certainly our police force. And we have to start making sure that the police are not just supporting fascism, because when they say that fascists should be allowed to march on our streets, they are allowing hate crime. Hate is a crime. The police are there to stop crime. To allow these people to march on our streets is to just enable hate crime on our streets. And it is our women, it is our children, and it is black people in our communities that will fall foul of the police that are failing to protect our communities. And I think it's really important that we look at what the police are doing. So our MPs need to be held to account, but certainly our police force also needs to understand that to allow these marches on our street is wrong. And yeah, of course we want freedom of speech. you know, they want to stop freedom of speech, don't they? And we're fighting against that, where they're trying to put, you know, they're putting people in prison for having a banner, you know, banners about Palestine, and they want to put people, you know, the elderly, octogenarians, people 80 plus in prison because they want to dumb down free speech. So we're not about stopping free speech. What we are about is stopping hate crime. You do not allow people to commit hate crime on your street, and that is what these people are doing. Again, we hear sometimes, you know, we hear a lot of, that person's not a racist. You know, they're just worried about what's happening. They're not racist. They're not fascist. They're just worried. I have stood on demonstrations and I have seen people standing behind, send them home, get them out. If you are on a demonstration and you see a sign that talks about sending somebody home because of the colour of their skin, you know that's a racist rally. And if you're not a racist, you should be turning yourself around and you should be taking yourself off home and writing to your MP about your issues, speaking to whoever you need to, speaking to a community group about how you can campaign against the cuts, you know, the cuts to the NHS, about the cuts to benefit, about what government's trying to do to the sick and disabled. There are ways of doing that, but you don't do it by telling people that are running from bombs and bullets that have been provided by this country. You don't fix the ills of society by trying to push those people back into the channel where they could lose their lives. That is not how we do it. We do it by building in our communities, by our collective as a working class, a class collective, and we challenge the fascist rhetoric, we challenge the racism, and we also challenge our government and make sure that our government are fixing the issues in society, building houses, putting enough money in people's pockets, giving people, you know, talking about welfare and benefit. Nobody fares well from the benefit system because there isn't enough money put in your pocket to fare well from it. Give people enough money so that they can go out and spend and start the economy turning again. Because when you see that, you know, huge percentages of government's own workers are sitting claiming universal credit, it tells you that society is broken and your economy is stagnant because there isn't enough money in anybody's pocket. So there are real complex issues for us to deal with here, but we can deal with them. We can deal with them as a collective, with all of us standing together, whether you're black, whether you are white, whether you are abled, whether you're disabled, whether whoever you may be, whether you're LGBT plus, we are all in this together, and we all have to stand together and make sure that we are fighting back, but fighting back as a class and not allowing others to come in and divide us. Thank you, Mohammed. You're on mute.
You think after 5 years of using these systems that we would be on mute, but anyway, my laptop's decided not to connect, so I'm on my phone. But thank you so much, Angela. I could listen to you for hours. I was just saying to Leroy, who's sat next to me, that we could listen to Angela go on for ages. I suppose one of the questions that has come through, which I think is quite relevant because you're the group president for DWP, is what advice would you give to reps or members who witness far right or racist behaviour at work and want to challenge it confidently and safely and without being targeted by the far right, but also by the employer who might decide to turn on the victim?
Yeah, okay. So I mentioned the anti-racism, anti-fascism strategy earlier, and where that talks about changing attitudes in the workplace, and it does give the training events help you to have those difficult conversations. But if that were me and I saw that, I mean, I would tackle that head on. But I've done that a lot. You know, I'm quite experienced in doing that. So I would sit and I would have a conversation with the person that I heard being racist, and I would question. I would break down their argument, and I'd say, what is it that you actually mean? And when you try to break it down, you realize that, well, they realize for themselves that they are actually, you know, speaking about somebody's race, so they are actually racist. But if there is somebody that is breaching standards of behaviour, then that has to be dealt with through the line manager process. It has to. And, you know, I'm a Scouser and we don't like grassing, but there are times when you have to go, and because if somebody is being racist and being abusive, then that is not acceptable. It is a hate crime. We did have a member that suffered racial abuse, and the line manager said to them, well, you can go home, but we'll see you tomorrow. A member contacted me and I said, well, they won't see you tomorrow, will they? Because you can't just walk back into that workplace when that's happened to you. I spoke to the line manager and they said, I said, well, this should be reported. It's a hate crime. And the line manager said, well, she can report it. I said, so you want a black woman to go into the police and report a hate crime? You are the line manager and your policy tells you that you have to report it. So look to your policy, speak to the line management chain. But if it's not something that's happened yet, get on. I say yet because I just expect that it is going to happen at some point now. That's just how it is in the workplace. But try to get onto one of those courses. And if there isn't one running, if you can't find one, speak to your regional office and we can run those courses and we can get them online and they can be set up quite quickly. We just need to make sure we've got enough members that want to attend them. Thanks, Mohammed.
No, thank you. Nyla's here as well. So, Nyla, can I ask you, how can individual PCS members support Stand Up to Racism? What sort of activities are coming up in the weeks and months to come?
So obviously, as I said, we do want people to connect up with their local groups because, the strength of the anti-racist movement and the work that we do at Stand Up to Racism comes from the support we get from the trade union movement. I mean, we've done PCS have done some amazing work. When you think about the Rwanda campaign, it was led first and foremost by the PCS. And we want to see more of those kind of joint activities. So, yes, find your local Stand Up to Racism group, get involved, make sure you've got a PCS member represented on the local kind of steering group or organising group, whatever it is. Get your members there. Make sure if there is going to be a mobilisation against some far-right march or there's a demonstration outside a hotel, or even if there's a solidarity event, there's lots of solidarity events that will be taking place across the next month with organisations like Care for Cali. Make sure your members know about it. Make sure your union banner is represented at these events. That's the strength of our movement. But again, as I said, it'd be great if we got some more PCS members going along to the national conference because we want trade union activists and PCS members to be at the heart of the discussions around how we take this movement forward. It's only as strong as the individuals and the trade union organisation that is part of that movement. So the call would be to, sign up to the conference for next weekend, get in touch with your local Stand Up to Racism group. If you don't know who the local group, who they are that you can reach out to, get in touch with the national office, or you can Google the Stand Up to Racism website and it's got a list of local groups. If there isn't one in your own area, get in touch and we'll help set one up. We are all leading this anti-racist movement. No one else is going to do it for us.
No, that's really, really important. And it's really important that we really bring people together and communities together because people are feeling aggrieved. Angela, there's a question here. What steps are we taking to protect our members in the anticipation that if the polls are correct and in 2029, I'm a bit skeptical that they're going to form a majority government. But if they get into power, Reform are going to decimate the civil service. This week they announced the abolition of significant numbers of civil servants, bring in political appointees, do away with health and safety laws, do away with employment right laws, as Fran was reminding us. What can we do to kind of campaign to prepare for that eventuality, and if it comes that we're ready?
It is absolutely terrifying, isn't it? Just the thought of it is terrifying. So we have to campaign. But for PCS, okay, so because we are civil service and all of our members work for government, we have to work for the government of the day. So PCS is not affiliated to any particular party, and what we can't do is tell our members who we think that they should vote for. So all we can do is build our campaigns and strengthen the narrative of collectivism, the narrative of ending division and building communities. So I think for PCS, I think we do a really good job of that already because we are in every community, we are at every rally, and everywhere we go, we speak about our politics, which are left politics, which are socialist politics, which are about building community. And you'll have seen, I'm hoping that members will have seen our tax justice campaign. So we've got a tax justice campaign. We have the alternative to social security campaign, where we know that we can have a better social security service. We've got the safe passage policy. We're working on the skilled worker visa. We've got a campaign that we are building to change, to get rid of the changes that have put our skilled workers, you know, out of work, and they may have to leave the country. So PCS are working on all of those policies. And I think that is how we do it, by fixing the issues in society so that people will not want to vote for reform. They will hear the reform narrative and it won't land with them, because they will see that there are changes already happening and those changes are better. And I think for PCS members, because we are on the inside of government, we work for government, so we have the ability to push it that little bit harder, because government are our actual employer. So it is from working on the inside and building out into our communities, but changing that narrative so we do not end up with a reform government.
Yeah. Naila, same question to you. How can we stop a reform and far-right government taking office in 2029?
Look, I'm fairly confident that we can push them back. And I don't think we just wait for the next general election. I think we need to get organised now. There will be local elections taking place next May. There will be by-elections taking place. Every time one of these elections come up, we need to be organised enough to get the vote out and make sure we tell people you can vote. And these are the myths around reform. There's plenty of leaflets that Stand Up to Racism have published that you can download from the website, get printed up. You can go leaflet your street. You know, when they stood in Altrincham recently, we leafleted the ward with, you know, door to door, street by street. We put leaflets for everywhere. Not saying, look, go vote for so-and-so. We said, look, these are the myths that they're telling you. They're not supporting the working class. They're not going to prop up the welfare state, which is what we all want. Let's be honest, we all want change. And the key to that change is we want someone to protect the welfare state. Working class people are, you know, that it's really close to their heart. Well, we know Farage isn't going to do that. He's not going to protect workers' rights. So it's about not waiting till the next general election. It's about being organised now. And that's why I think local groups are so important, because you will know if there is a by-election coming up or there's a local election and who's standing and how we need to get organised, which streets we need to leaflet, whether it's been done, how many times it's been done, even right down leafleting outside local schools or, you know, tram stops, tube stations, bus stations, train stations. These are all acts that we can do to get our word out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Angela Grant, our group president for DWP. I keep saying group vice president because I'm thinking about introducing myself rather than you, and it's a great honor to work under your leadership. So thank you so much for all that you do. And Naila, yeah, solidarity, and thank you so much for joining us as well on this final event for Black History Month 2025. It's been a fantastic month of activities. We've had 4 or 5 sessions, which is the best we've had in a very, very long time. I want to say thank you to the Equality Department for all their support, led ably by our very own Law and Caroline and Di, and the 2 Di's, should I say. And also, can I say thank you to my committee. They've been absolutely fantastic picking up the work. My Vice Chair, Tracy Hilton, as well. I just want to plug 2 things. One is Islamophobia Awareness Month. It starts on Saturday, 1st of November, in the month of November. And this year's annual delegate conference in Brighton, our conference passed a unanimous motion condemning Islamophobia and supporting Islamophobia Awareness Month. So this year, the Black Members Committee has been tasked with leading this campaign, and we've got the theme this year is Flip the Script. We've got our event on the 20th of November, Thursday the 20th of November, again 6 o'clock to 7:30. It will be across our social media platforms here on PCS, and it'll be an opportunity for members to share their lived experience. We've got representatives from the Muslim community, but we've also got our National President, Martin Kavanagh, as our guest speaker alongside MPs and other speakers. And again, that'll be available for you to join us. As ever, if you need any help or support,
Mohammed, can I
Sure.
just interrupt, please? Can I just thank
Please.
you also? I want to thank
Thank you.
you on behalf of all of our Black members and on behalf of PCS as a whole for the work that you are doing, for all of our members, but certainly for our Black member community. It's been outstanding work that you've done. So thank you for that and for chairing tonight.
Thank you so much, Ange. We keep going, don't we? So also very, very important, if you are suffering from racism, discrimination, and bullying in your workplace, reach out to the union if you're a member of PCS, and reach out to your local branch rep. If you don't get anywhere, you can get in touch with the committee, myself and Tracy, by emailing equality@pcs.org. I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. There were some comments that we couldn't reply because of my connection issues, but I promise we'll go through those questions and publish them. But thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Thank you for Black History Month, and we'll see you in November for Islamophobia Awareness Month. And then, as every year, we'll see you in January for Holocaust Memorial Day as well. We don't pick and choose our causes. We're consistently anti-racist and support all communities. So thank you so much, everyone.